Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Robbie Basel Show. How are we doing today, guys? It's so great to be back here on a beautiful Friday. Just a couple quick updates on what's going to be the deal for today. Quick notes. Today is the International Break Review of October. I didn't do a preview because of all the stuff going on in Major League Baseball. And don't worry, the playoffs and everything will be covered next on Ball Knowers because I really haven't had the much time to try and squeeze in everything. And with how much soccer we will cover on this channel, I went with that direction, especially since I've already skipped the video and the break ended 2 days ago, and we have soccer coming this weekend. So it's a full soccer video, NHL season preview. I know I pushed it back again. It is officially on Tuesday. I'm planning out the video. I have all the edits. I have everything ready to go. I just couldn't launch it today. So that video will be going live on Tuesday. So it'll be going live sometime on Tuesday. Thinking in the late afternoon, early evening, but who knows at this point. And then after that, it will be regularly scheduled programming on this channel. I know it's been a lot of previews, a lot of reviews of there's a ton of stuff going on in October. And with the amount of time that I have right now, I feel like this is the perfect video to do. So we had what we're going to go over today. We're going to briefly go over some of the Nations Leagues. UEFA Nations League will not be covered today. We are not going over UEFA Nations League. Nothing really happened, and to be honest, no one really cares about it. But because this is an American-based channel, me being from the USA, we will be going over the CONCACAF Nations League solely because of the draw coming out for the quarterfinals, and Suriname actually being this team that to shock everyone. More on Suriname later, but the big dramatics this week were on World Cup qualifying for Africa, Asia, and South America, and AFCON qualifying. Because AFCON qualifying, everyone missed out because that was some of the most entertaining football I've ever seen. And two big giants might be missing the Africa Cup of Nations next year. Let's break it all down. We're starting off, though. We're actually going to start with Africa because we're going to get this out the way now. I couldn't wait to talk about it any longer. We're starting in Group A of Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers. Tunisia. What are we doing here, man? Look, going into this window, we had Tunisia, who were comfortably ahead of Comoros, the Gambia, and Madagascar because none of them wanted to win a game. Well, the Gambia and Madagascar played out a thrilling 1-1, including a 97th minute equalizer from the Gambia from Minte to grab a draw because apparently Madagascar doesn't play Madagascar. I don't know why. Following this, we went to Tunis, and Comoros went out and beat Tunisia, which makes perfect sense because nothing ever makes sense in Africa because, once again, that's the perfect way to do this. So Comoros wins and are now on 5 points. Tunisia, who are on 6, the Gambia and Madagascar are on like 2 or something at this point. Well, the Gambia beat Madagascar on the return fixture, which was also in Morocco as well, in a different part of Morocco. So we were still in Morocco, and the Gambia went out and beat Madagascar. So that was happening. So the Gambia, all they needed was for Comoros to lose, and the Gambia would be in second. That didn't happen because Comoros, those tiny islands just northwest of Madagascar, went unbeaten against Tunisia, who beat France in a World Cup. Comoros went out and drew Tunisia to set up our group with Tunisia, Comoros, the Gambia. Madagascar's essentially out of it now because Madagascar has to go out there and play Tunisia and then go away to Comoros. My reaction to this, what an effort by Comoros. Listen, when they went out and drew the Gambia, I thought the Gambia had a really good chance And then Comoros, I mean, the Gambia lost to Tunisia, but that's not that all bad. Comoros drawing Madagascar, I thought was going to be the biggest red flag of them all. But when you watch back the game against Tunisia, it doesn't seem real. Like, Comoros goes out and beats Tunisia. You do not see that every day. And this is why African soccer is some of the best in the world because of how much random stuff can happen. This is one of them. Tunisia blowing it not once, but twice to Comoros, including in the second match, going down to Comoros early in the second half. I still don't even know how legit this Comoros team is because nothing makes any goddamn sense anymore. Comoros, in a realistic world, would have lost the first game and probably lost the second. Instead, they get 4 points from 6 against Tunisia and are in a prime position to qualify. They get the Gambia next, which that game is for qualifying. If there's a draw, it would be advantage Comoros because Comoros finishes with Madagascar, and then the Gambia has to go away to Tunis to play Tunisia. So that group is balling. Everyone's in it other than Madagascar, unless Madagascar grabs 2 wins somehow against Tunisia and Comoros, which I just don't see. Group B, another group that makes no sense because remember, Eritrea is banned, so Morocco has to play in this. They've already qualified, and we've seen one of our minnows get eliminated, and I'm very sad. It started on October 11th. Gabon drew Lesotho and gave me all the hope in the world. Morocco beat the Central African Republic to basically eliminate the Central African Republic because I'm just going to spoil it. They lost a combined 9-0 to Morocco. 5-0 in the first match, 4-0 in the second match, including both matches being played in Morocco. Because once again, some teams just don't play home matches, maybe because of wars. We know one of them is because of a war, and we'll talk about that team later. But in the return leg, by the way, Lesotho doesn't play in Lesotho because they're like inside of South Africa. If you look on a map, they played at home in Durban against Gabon and lost. So Gabon gets 4 points this window and jumps up to a 4-point lead over the Central African Republic. Lesotho's out because they have 1 point with a couple matches to go, and they do not have the head-to-head against Gabon. Therefore, they're eliminated. Gabon can clinch qualification with 1 point, or the Central African Republic beating Lesotho, losing to Lesotho, which I think is very possible. I mean, Lesotho's beat some of the has gotten points from some of the more underrated teams in Africa recently. And if Central African Republic beats Lesotho and Gabon does not beat Morocco in November, we do get a do or die match between the Central African Republic and Gabon in mid to late November, on November 18th. So all to play for in this group. It's pretty much over because the Central African Republic got absolutely destroyed by Morocco. And it's pretty much over because Gabon needs literally like 1 point against probably the Central African Republic because I don't see them beating Morocco. Morocco beat them 4-1 in the first match. So I don't know how this is going to end. It's probably going to go the way of the Fighting Aubameyang's. So good job, Gabon. Morocco already qualified because they're hosting. But the second spot will be decided in November. It's probably going to the way of Gabon, just because they have the better goal difference and they're 4 points clear with 2 matches to go. In Group C, Cape Verde was in prime position because they had to get through in second, and Egypt were flying as well. Because, well, Mauritania had 3 points, and Cape Verde was on 3 points. Egypt won both of their matches against Mauritania because that's just how this works. And Cape Verde, all they had to do was beat Botswana twice, and they would have qualified. Well, Cape Verde didn't do that. Cape Verde, in the first match in Cabo Verde, lost to Botswana at home, courtesy of a second-minute goal from Ora Bonier, to lose to Botswana. And this is why I love this damn sport. And not only that, Cape Verde goes out in the return match in Francistown, Botswana, which that stadium, by the way, I saw a photo of it. It looks awesome. Botswana wins again. Botswana, of all people, are in a good enough position because they have to play freaking Mauritania, just like Cape Verde does. Botswana, if they beat Mauritania, have like a 99% chance to make it because Cape Verde blew it by losing twice against Botswana. And Cape Verde, if you have no idea how good Cape Verde is or where they are, they're those tiny islands in the western part off the western coast of Africa. Um, and their history, they're really, really, really good. Like absurdly good. They have a bunch of great players in the AFCON. They really haven't didn't do anything until 2013, but in the last two AFCONs, they've made the knockouts. They made it to the quarterfinals of the most recent one in Ivory Coast, and now might not even make it to the AFCON at this point. They have to beat Egypt, who already qualified, even though they played a 1-0 return match against Mauritania, who are also not horrible, by the way. That Mauritania team's not bad. Cape Verde has to go out and grab 6 points from six and have Botswana lose both to go through. That's absurd. Botswana, of all people, a team that's not even ranked in like the top 150 in the world, I don't think, have a brilliant chance. By the way, they are ranked in the top 150. They're 145th in the world. They're in between Ethiopia and Lesotho in world ranking. That team, out of pot four, are in prime position to make the AFCON. I love it. I love this damn sport. Egypt are through on 12 points. They're safe. They're already through. They are the second team to qualify that we haven't talked about yet. In Group D, you already knew this was going to get weird. We had a canceled game, which we'll talk about in a second, but we opened it up with Benin and Rwanda. Now, Rwanda, if you remember, were that team in World Cup qualifying that was like just causing chaos in one of the major groups. Weren't they in the group? Aren't they also in the group with like Nigeria? I think so. If you look at their recent results and fixtures in the World Cup qualifying, they beat Lesotho, they lost to Benin. They're in the group with South Africa and Zimbabwe, and they play Nigeria next year. Well, they went out and lost to Benin, who are also not bad either. They lost 3-0 to Benin. So we then went to Kigali in a must-win match for Rwanda, or they have no chance. And they went out and won. Rwanda are still in it. And the only reason they're still in it because of the canceled match between Nigeria and Libya. Now, in Africa, there's a lot of, I'm going to curse real quick, and I'm sorry, so cover your ears. A lot of shithousery going on where, like, you try to do anything to get a competitive advantage. And you don't hear a lot of stuff that goes off the feet in like airports and stuff, or like stuff prior to a match because nothing really comes out about it. Libya took it to a much further extent. And I'll just pull up the article. They stranded Nigeria in an airport in Libya for 10 hours. And we don't know if, and so basically Nigeria forfeited the match. After Nigeria, by the way, Nigeria won the first matchup over Libya 1-0 because, yes, you're supposed to beat Libya. But now, like, the Super Eagles of Nigeria were stuck in a Libyan airport for like 10 hours without food and water. And let's just read the article. We're gonna read the article from Inside World Football, so they get a shout out to that. Like it's absolutely absurd that this is this type of stuff going on. The Nigerian national team are back home after being trapped in a Libyan airport. It was more than 10 hours, 16 hours. The treatment being labeled as being like a hostage situation. They're supposed to face Libya and Benghazi on Tuesday in the Africa Cup of Nations, but boycotted the match after being left fuming by their treatment on arrival in the country. The LFF fiercely rejected any suggestion of foul play or sabotage. I don't know what else they're supposed to do. Even though Nigeria were top of the group and were unbeaten, while Libya had pretty much no chance. They were set to arrive in Benghazi on Sunday, but their plane was diverted to Al Abarak, which is about like forever away. The Libyan authorities are then said to have failed to provide any transportation, and the airport gate was locked with the players inside. As a result, the Nigerian Football Federation released a statement that they were boycotting the match and they were going home, which honestly I think is the perfect response from Nigeria. Ain't no way they were playing that match. Now, I'm going to be the one to say, I don't know what happens next. I think you ban Libya. Now, I have nothing against Libya and Libyan people. Like, I've never met anyone. I have nothing against them. This type of stuff is disgraceful. There's been rumors of like Nigeria and South Africa doing this type of stuff like years ago, but we didn't hear about anything. This is horrible. Fatigued players and officials remain nonplussed as the host Libyan Football Federation failed to send any reception team or even vehicles to take the delegation members from the airport to their hotel, which is about 3 hours away in Benghazi. Da, 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 da. This is not football. Very embarrassing. Hostage to a national team. Disgrace. That's what Wilfred Ndidi said. Victor Osimhen has said that this attempt by the Libyan FA is no longer just a delay. It is an intentional tactic to weaken and ruin the morale of the players, and it's beginning to look more like a hostage situation. The safety and the well-being of my teammates and all the team staff are more important things right now, which he's 100% correct. Now, I don't like Victor Osimhen anymore, but he is 100% right. This type of stuff, we aren't in a war. Like this, you could think that some of the matchups and some of the scenes in soccer can look like wars, but this type of stuff is the two that were facing each other. This isn't a war. This is a football match. A Libyan team that had a 1 point and are essentially out of it because they're not playing the match because this is absurd. And CAF later confirmed that the match would not take place and stated that decision regarding its outcome would be made, which we haven't heard of anything yet. So, in short, Libya did the worst thing they could possibly do. Nigeria is now not playing a fourth match, which means that Rwanda and Benin have a chance to top Nigeria because Libya trapped Nigeria in an airport for 16 hours. Who would have thought that's the way to go about it? Nigeria faces Benin and has to play Rwanda. Benin and Rwanda both get to play Libya. I hope they both destroy them because this type of stuff can't happen. I'm done talking politics. Back to football. Group E, Algeria qualified for the AFCON because they went out and beat Togo twice, including a 18th minute penalty winner in the second match, and they won 5-1 in the opening game. Equatorial Guinea decided to play to look like themselves and are in prime position to make it because Togo can't beat anyone, apparently. Togo, if you remember from September, they drew Liberia and then they drew Equatorial Guinea, which wasn't the worst start. Drawing Liberia is pretty bad. Liberia is not very good. You then go out and get destroyed by Algeria and now have to beat Liberia and Equatorial Guinea and have Equatorial Guinea lose to Algeria to have any form of a chance. I don't like the odds for Togo because they have a -5 goal difference and they just can't win games. So Equatorial Guinea have a very good shot. I've been a big fan of that team for years. They have a lot of good things going for them, and they are now in prime position to qualify again for the AFCON. a team that's never been knocked out of the AFCON group stages, by the way. Group F, and this is where the other team that was talking about, this is where the real BS began. Ghana. This group has Angola, Sudan, Ghana, and Niger. Angola went out and beat Niger twice, which the second match, the both matches were really suspect because Angola only won 2-0 against Niger, and they needed a 75th minute penalty and an 85th minute second half goal to get the 2-0. And then in the second match, they scored inside 60 seconds and then did nothing else. Works for me. By the way, that game was in Morocco. But we're staying in Libya because Ghana and Sudan had to square off twice. The first match was in Ghana. Now, Ghana, prior to this match, was on 2 points, and they needed to win at least one of the two to stay in the race with Sudan and Angola because Niger probably had no chance because they were playing Angola, who are on fire, by the way, because they beat Ghana, they beat Sudan, and then they beat Niger twice. Well, the first match did not go the way I thought it was going to go. It was a 0-0 in Ghana. A 0-0. So Ghana are in. So Ghana entered this match with 1 point because they lost. My mistake. They went out. They lost to Angola on the 93rd minute winner by Felicio Milson, and then they drew Niger. Well, they then went out and drew Sudan, and then lost to Sudan. Now, Sudan, if you don't remember, I believe they're in a war currently, which is why this match was played in Libya. I just want to make sure that I think they're in another civil war. The Sudanese Civil War. Yep, there you go. There's like a lot of stuff. I'm not gonna go into the Sudanese Civil War, but they are in a civil war, and that a nation in a civil war just went out and beat Ghana. Ghana now has no chance, because they don't have the head-to-head tiebreaker either. So they're gonna need the luck of Cape Verde and everyone else to having to beat Angola and Niger and have Sudan not get a point against Niger. If Sudan gets a point against Niger in the first match of November, Ghana's done. And the Black Stars, a team that qualified for World Cups, they made it to the World Cup knockouts a couple of World Cups ago. They've been really, really good. Let's look at Ghana's history. Recent seasons. Players' records. They've qualified for 4 out of the last 5 World Cups, including making a quarterfinal run in 2010. And they've made the knockouts once back in 2006 in their first go. They made it to the groups. They made it into the World Cup in Brazil, and they made it to the World Cup in Qatar when they were in that group with like Uruguay and South Korea. That mess of a group. But point being, they then went out in AFCON. They just don't like winning matches. This year, how many matches have they won this year? Oh, they've actually won a couple. So this year, Ghana has played like 14 matches overall from the Africa Cup of Nations. They played in World Cup qualifying. This is a team, by the way, that got knocked out of AFCON group stages back in Ivory Coast. They did not get a win in this year until June 6th when they went away and beat Mali. They then beat the Central African Republic. They have not won a game since. They've won 2 games all year. 2 in this calendar year. And 3 games over the last 370 days. And that was against Madagascar. In that stretch, they've lost to Comoros. Nigeria's not that bad. They've lost to Angola, Sudan. They've drawn Niger. They drew Namibia. Like, how is this possible from Ghana? This is a national team that's like top 5 in Africa. If you think of a list of African powerhouses, you think of Morocco, you think of Ghana, you think of Morocco, Ghana, Egypt, Nigeria. This can't happen. I don't understand. Ghana's probably out. We are taking too long in Africa, so we just got to keep it rolling. Group G, Ivory Coast, Zambia, and Sierra Leone. The Chads are out of it, even though they drew Zambia, because why not? They then blew it to Zambia, but Ivory Coast lost to Sierra Leone. So Sierra Leone, after winning the second match, because Ivory Coast won the first game, still have a chance. The big question will be, will Zambia actually qualify? Because Zambia has to play the Ivory Coast and then play Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is away to Chad, which that should be fun. And Chad plays in Cameroon, so that will be a very interesting fixture. Sierra Leone actually not in the worst spot ever to qualify for this thing. Group H saw a resurgence from Guinea because they went out and beat Ethiopia twice to give themselves a chance. Tanzania bottled it and lost to the DR Congo twice, including conceding an own goal and then 2 goals after the 85th minute to lose twice to the DR Congo. Because Guinea won twice and Tanzania can grab points, the DR Congo was going back to AFCON. A team that made it to like the quarterfinals or like semifinals of the last AFCON are back. The big question is going to be with Tanzania because they have to play Guinea and Ethiopia. Well, it's Ethiopia first and then Guinea. They need Guinea to lose to the DR Congo to have a chance. And if you remember how the first time that went, the DR Congo won at home 1-0 in Kinshasa. So I think Tanzania still has a chance, but November is going to be a very big window for those teams in second and third. From your Tanzanias, your Cape Verdes, Ghana, Rwanda, Central African Republic's probably out of it. The Gambia, some of the smaller nations, and Ghana and Cape Verde, I guess, need to go out there in next month, in about a month's time. This in a month from today is when the end of the final international break of the year is, which is crazy because I've done this for a year and over almost a year and a half now, this channel. So Tanzania are in trouble because they have to go out there and actually beat Guinea. And granted, the first time these two played, Tanzania beat Guinea. So the only reason Tanzania is not in a better spot because they drew Ethiopia. This is why you beat Ethiopia, kids. Next match, we have 4 groups left. Let's fly right through them. Mozambique and Mali in group whatever this is. Mali went out and drew and then beat and then drew Guinea-Bissau. So Guinea-Bissau has a chance. Mozambique drew Eswatini in the first match after going ahead and then conceded to Eswatini. Mozambique then in the return match in South Africa, because Eswatini is also inside of South Africa, went out and won. Mozambique won to set up your group as Mozambique, Mali, Guinea-Bissau, and Eswatini. Eswatini is out. Guinea-Bissau has to beat Eswatini and then beat Mozambique, which I just don't think is possible. I think Guinea-Bissau has no chance because Mali is beating Eswatini, and then Guinea-Bissau has to beat Mozambique. And if Mozambique gets like a point, then pretty much Guinea-Bissau is out. It's not over yet for Guinea-Bissau, but it's not looking very good for them, and Eswatini is out already. Group J, flying right through this. Cameroon qualified. Kenya is essentially out of it. We are praising the hell out of Kenya in the preview video that didn't go up. And I see why, because, they beat Namibia. They drew Zimbabwe. They had 4 points. They ended this window still on 4 points. They went out and lost to Cameroon twice, even though the second match was only a 1-0 and played in Uganda. I don't remember why. Is Kenya in a war too? They're fighting the government. No. Am I forgetting something? Is Kenya not in a war? El Shabib in Kenya. I don't even know what this is. So Kenya is in like there's like some possible rebellion. I don't really know. If someone could explain that to me, that'd be cool. Kenya doesn't play matches in Kenya. They play in Uganda, and they went out and lost to Cameroon. Kenya now has to go away to Zimbabwe, which Zimbabwe went out and beat Namibia twice, which Namibia, by the way, made it to the last AFCON. They're out. So Zimbabwe is in like a pretty good spot because they have to go out and play Kenya in the first match. If Zimbabwe beats Kenya, it's essentially done, and Cameroon is through already. If Kenya beats Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe's going to have to go out and beat Cameroon, which I just don't see happening. So, all to play for in those matches, too. Two groups left. Uganda, we already talked. We spoke about matches that were going inside of in their country. This group should have been wraps, but because South Africa doesn't like winning games on the road, they went out and drew the Congo, not the DR Congo, like the actual Congo, like the Congo line. Well, they drew the Congo, so the Congo are on 4 points, and they have to play Uganda and South Sudan. I think. Yeah, they're away in Juba against South Sudan. So the Congo are still in it, but I don't like their chances. They still have to play at home against Uganda. And that Uganda team went out and beat South Sudan twice. So, including an own goal winner on the road to be in this position. Uganda are essentially through. South Africa, I like their odds. They have to go out there and play Uganda and then have to play South Sudan. So if South Africa wins, then it's essentially done. So I think if South Africa wins, the group is done. If South Africa beats Uganda, it's over. So the Congo are gonna have to pray for a win from Uganda against South Africa, which I just don't see in the return match. And South Sudan is out because they have 0 points. Group L is wraps. Burkina Faso and Senegal are both through. Malawi, who like made it to the knockouts of the 2021-22 AFCON, are out, and Burundi also out. Burundi lost twice to Burkina Faso, and Senegal's 96th minute winner in the second leg pushed them through, courtesy of Sadio Mane. And the Senegalese are also back in the AFCON, as well as Burkina Faso, who are one of them who probably be sleeper to win the whole damn thing. Africa's a wrap. See you later. Asian World Cup qualifying. We'll go through this a little bit quicker. And we started off with our friends in Uzbekistan. Now, Uzbekistan entering the window, I believe we're on 6 points. They had 6 points from six. They beat North Korea and they beat Kyrgyzstan because they beat the two worst teams. They were both bad. And Uzbekistan had a big window. They were playing Iran and the UAE, two of the better teams in the group. Well, Uzbekistan opened it up with drawing Iran, which fair enough. And then they beat the UAE in Tashkent to be on 10 points and in control in the group because they are tied with Iran. Because after their opening draw, Iran then went out and beat Qatar 4-1 after going down to Qatar. So Iran and Uzbekistan are flying. But there's been a couple of teams that have been coming back, and one of those is the Qataris. Now, the Qataris, in the last window, they lost to the UAE. That's not the end of the world. But then they drew North Korea. So then we were giving them a lot of hate. They were playing Kyrgyzstan in a must-win match against Kyrgyzstan. They then went out and beat Kyrgyzstan, which, good, that's what you're supposed to do. And then they got annihilated by the Iranians. So Qatar are on 4 points and are in fourth because the UAE are also on 4 points and are in third because they went out and also drew North Korea. So apparently North Korea can't win or lose unless you're playing Kyrgyzstan. This group is so random. North Korea have lost only 2 matches, and that's against Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan opened up the window with losing to Qatar, and then they went out and beat North Korea 1-0. 1-0. Brausman got the winner for Kyrgyzstan to set up our group as Iran and Uzbekistan, begging pardon, are in control. They are flying. They're 6 points clear of the fourth round drop. The UAE, Qatar are in third and fourth, 1 point clear of Kyrgyzstan and 2 points clear of North Korea. The only team that are in the bottom two that I think have a legitimate chance is Kyrgyzstan. The only issue for them is they play the UAE again. Don't they? Haven't they played the UAE already? No, I'm stupid. They have to play Iran and the UAE, so I think for a team that's not as good as Uzbekistan, I think that's gonna be a very tall ask for Kyrgyzstan. Uzbekistan plays Qatar in November. That's a very big match in Al Rayan. Iran has a good window. They play the two worst teams in North Korea and Kyrgyzstan. By the way, North Korea does not play matches in North Korea. They play in Laos, which you kind of forget's a place because it's really, really small. They do have to then go away to Kyrgyzstan, the Iranians. North Korea plays Uzbekistan and Iran. Have fun. And that would be the end of the windows for Group A on the calendar year. Group B, we then go to our group with South Korea. Now, South Korea, they opened up with that draw against Palestine, and then they went out and beat Oman. And I had to praise Oman because didn't really fall out of the match. Well, South Korea had to play Jordan, and Jordan were off to a very good start to World Cup qualifying themselves. They went out, they beat Palestine, but they drew Kuwait, so like you didn't know how good they were. Well, South Korea took it to Jordan and should have won by like 5, but they only won 2-0. Lee Jae-sung and Oh Hyung-gyu. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. I did my best. Led the way for South Korea to grab 3 points on the road in Amman. I don't know. They went on the road in Jordan, and South Korea wins. Oman, who were in a horrible spot on 0 points, they were home against Kuwait, and they had to beat Kuwait, and they beat Kuwait 4-0. So Oman's good for now. Iraq then we know how good the Iraqis are. They're really, really good. They're going to be contending for a top 2 spot all the way. They went out and beat Palestine, which they just had to beat Palestine. Only 1-0 though. Is Ayman Hussein, who got the goal, and Iraq were on 3 points. And those were the only points they would get this window because they had to play South Korea in Yongin. Now, South Korea at home are usually really, really good, and they went up courtesy of Ho Se-hyun. But Ayman Hussein scored again. Then Oh Hyung-gyu scores again. And then Lee Jae-sung, both goal scorers from the previous matchup against Jordan. Bayesh grabs a late consolation goal, but it's not enough as South Korea get a big 3 points and a big 6 points on the window to be top of the group. Jordan then took it to the Oman national team, and Oman national team that's not bad, by the way. They've beaten like Japan in Japan. They've gotten points against Australia. But yeah, Oman blew it by getting destroyed by Jordan. And the bottom two of Palestine and Kuwait drew each other because Palestine got a 93rd minute equalizer from Kunbar to level the score, and it ends as a 2-all draw, helping literally no one. Kuwait have 3 draws. By the way, they've drawn Jordan, they've drawn Iraq, and then they drew Palestine. This is the most random group ever. You draw 2 of the better teams in the group, and then you draw Palestine. So sure, why not? Kuwait has to play South Korea and Jordan. Have fun. South Korea gets to play the 2 worst teams in the group next to probably push themselves much closer to confirming themselves a spot in the World Cup. They have to play away to Kuwait in Kuwait City, and then they're playing in Amman, which is in Jordan, because Palestine can't play in Palestine. We all know why that happened. Oman plays a very important window. They're playing in Muscat against Palestine, and then have to play at home in a must get a point match for both Iraq and Oman, because Iraq has to play Jordan, and that matchup will be for second in the group. And if Iraq beats Jordan, they want to keep their spot as second in the group. And they cannot lose that match to Oman. Jordan plays their second match against Kuwait, as mentioned before, and Jordan, of course, play Iraq in the opening match on November 14th. That group's nuts, just like Group C. Japan's through pretty much already. They have a 5-point gap, and 3 teams are tied for second. And the reason for that is kind of absurd. You see, Bahrain and Indonesia, I thought were 2 teams that can maybe sneak into the 4th round, maybe push themselves towards a World Cup spot, particularly Indonesia. Well, they were robbed. Bahrain played Indonesia in Rifa, and I watched this game. It was a brilliant match. 2 teams that played really, really hard. A lot of good goals, a lot of great chances. And Indonesia were leading 2-1 into stoppage time. And it was like 5 or 6 allocated minutes, but a somehow 99th minute equalizer from Marhoun, who's got a brace on the day, by the way, got a point for Indonesia. Well, for Bahrain into Indonesia. Indonesia got robbed. This game should have ended way before. That Indonesian team is causing problems, though. But that momentum was stopped for Indonesia because they went out and lost in Qingdao to the worst team here, or the worst big nation here. China. Now, China sucks. They are not good. They're bottom of their group for a reason. And the only reason they're even in this is because Indonesia went out and lost to them in match day 4, which also, by the way, opens the door for everyone else because Indonesia is now a very crucial 2 points behind Bahrain because Bahrain in the second match drew Saudi Arabia. Just for reference, this Indonesia team has drawn Saudi Arabia, they drew Australia, they then drew Bahrain, and then lost to China. Yeah, I don't get it either. They did play both matches on the road. And they've played 3 of their first 4 matches on the road against some of the bigger teams and China, and they have 3 points. Indonesia plays an extremely crucial window next because they have to play Japan and Saudi Arabia again. For some reason, they have to play them again because it's match day 6. That's why. We're already heading towards the second half of Asian World Cup qualifying 3rd round play. That's nuts. But back to Japan. They beat Saudi Arabia 2-0, which good for them. But then they drew Australia in the battle of the own goal. Both teams got an own goal, and it ended 1-1 at the Saitama. Australia, by the way, got 4 points this window because they went out and beat China and then drew Japan. So this would set up our group as Japan up top, Australia, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain all tied with each other. Then Indonesia and China are also tied on 3 points. But Japan with a very crucial 5-point gap, and they have to play Indonesia and China, which will probably put Japan through already to the next round because there ain't no way everyone's getting points from each other. There's no way that someone's not grabbing points against each other because Bahrain and Australia square off. Australia plays the Saudis, a very crucial window upcoming from Australia, by the way, because they have to play Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. So the Bahrain team is the sleeper now because Indonesia blew it by losing to China. If Indonesia won that match, they'd be in 3rd in that giant tie with everyone else. It'd be a 4-team tie in Group C. Absurd stuff in AFC. So we've gone through the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers. We've gone through the Asian World Cup qualifiers. Let's go over to CONMEBOL. CONMEBOL. What a time to be alive in CONMEBOL if you're not Chile. And if you're not Chile, you would have gotten annihilated by everyone. We're into so if you forget how this works, it's one giant table with all the South American countries. And in this window, it was a very crucial time period for Uruguay, who have been on the downslope. They don't like Marcelo Bielsa. They've had Darwin Nunez suspended because of the incident during Copa America. And, well, Uruguay went out and lost to Peru, which, okay, uh, brilliant start for them. Um, Argentina in the worst looking pitch I've ever seen. Oh, well, one of them. We've seen a lot worse. Ask the United States against Trinidad and like Panama and during the Bruce Arena era, all the complaining over there. Asking like there's been so many worse fields. It's also South America. Venezuela drew Argentina in Maturin, which caused a lot of problems for the Argentinians and caused a lot of anger for the Argentinians, which they would which they would use on their next opponent. More on them later. Bolivia. I love them. Bolivia. Are they when they play in the El Alto, it's ridiculous. Um, they beat Colombia. And we talked about this last time, how crucial it is to beat Colombia. That's Colombia's first loss of the window or of the whole qualifying cycle. Ecuador drew Paraguay in a boring fixture, and Brazil was Brazil and beat Chile. We already knew this. So match day 10 rolls around, and it was destruction FC for everyone except Ecuador and Uruguay, who played on another 0-0 and Montevideo, a terrible match. I'm not going to go through this. I'll just go as quickly through this match as there were goal scoring chances. Thank you very much. Colombia beat Chile, which begs the question: how has Chile fallen off so much? Brazil beat Peru. That made sense. Argentina put up 6 past Bolivia and made me really sad. They went up 3-0 in the first half. Messi had a hat trick, and that's all I'm going to say on this game. Because the big story in Condom Bowl has been with Paraguay. Now, Paraguay entering this match conceded 3 goals in 9 matches, which is amazing, by the way. But they only scored 2. They didn't concede again and played, I think, my favorite match of the window in South America. They played in Asuncion against Venezuela. Now, Venezuela coming off that horrible draw, depending on who you ask it is, against Argentina. And they had to beat Paraguay to be in a much better position. And Venezuela scored early. And I thought this match was over because Paraguay can't score. Well, Sanabria had other ideas and didn't grab but 1, but 2 goals. It's the first match all freaking qualifying that Paraguay has scored multiple goals. And Paraguay are now in an automatic World Cup qualifying position because they went out and scored multiple goals in a match and beat Venezuela. Please make it make sense. I cannot tell you how stupid that sounds. The stupidest things that I will say this window are Bolivia has allowed over 20 goals in 10 matches, which is hilariously terrible. And Paraguay has scored 4 goals and has more points than a team that's scored 11. Bolivia. They're getting annoying. They've won 4 of 10, though, which is better than last time. They're in it. It's going to be, I think, a 3-team race for the last spot and a half between Venezuela, Bolivia, and Paraguay. Argentina, Colombia are through. Brazil are pretty much going to be up there as well. The teams you got to worry about the rest of the way are Ecuador, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Venezuela. Peru and Chile basically kicked themselves out of it already. The worry with Uruguay is that they haven't won a match in a while. And ever since, like, they've been on, like, the worst run of form I've ever seen. Now, this year, ever since the Copa America, they've drawn with Paraguay, they've drawn Venezuela, they lost to Peru, and they just drew Ecuador. They haven't scored a goal since the Copa America in July. I will tell you the last time they scored a goal. Let's go find out. In the Copa America, a tournament they got third in, by the way, the last time they won a match, I gotta find the schedule now. In was the knockout stage of this damn tournament. No, it was in the group stage. Wow, that's even more longer ago than I thought. The last time Uruguay scored a goal was July 1st in Kansas City against the United States. I believe it was. No, I'm wrong. The last time they scored a goal was July 13th when they played Uruguay, they are Uruguay, when they played Canada in North Carolina. It's been 4 months almost now. They haven't scored a goal since mid-July. They're in significant trouble. The team that, though, that's really shocked me for a positive reason is Paraguay. You should not only score 4 goals and be in this position. Only in South America, am I right? Because Paraguay and their defense has been incredible. Incredible. That Paraguayan defense. They've won 3, they've drawn 4, and they lost 3. That's not bad for Paraguay. And with the expanded spots for South America, Paraguay, with where they are, could be in major position to qualify in a couple of, at this point, next year. Now, granted, you can't overreact to this team. They have to play Argentina again, and then the next window they play Argentina, but they then play a very crucial matchup and a must-win for both against Bolivia on November 19th at the El Alto. How big of a match would that be for both of them? Because Bolivia opens the next window away against Ecuador at the Monumental Isidro Romero Carbo in Guayaquil. I tried. How big of a matchup instead of matches it is in this window for Bolivia? Because they have to probably try and grab 4 points from this window to throw themselves back into the conversation. Like, that's huge for Bolivia and Paraguay, that they have to then go out there and play each other again. That match is going to be so much fun. I cannot wait, because let me find the first time these two, because I believe they've played before. Yeah, the opening time these two played each other, Bolivia went out and lost to Paraguay. That second return match in November is going to be so much fun, and there's so much on the line. That's the team you want to watch out for, other than Uruguay falling apart. World Cup qualifying also went to Oceania. We did talk about it in a previous video, but we'll talk about it quickly again. 4 total matches happened. It was only the first round of the group stage. There's 2 groups of 4 teams. If you finish at the top 2, you go to the playoffs. And if you win the whole bracket thing, you go to the World Cup. In Group A, Solomon Islands, Fiji, New Caledonia, and Papua New Guinea. I praise the hell out of the Solomon Islands. They go up a man and then lose to the Fijians. Well, they conceded, then drew a red card and still lost. The Solomon Islands, a team that has like 1 player you might know who it is if you know anything about this country. They went out and they lost to a rugby nation, which is awesome, by the way. And are now in trouble because New Caledonia, who are also not bad in their own right, beat Papua New Guinea. By the way, I just got to mention this. The only reason this is even a thing is because you don't want them playing those like ridiculous away days, and the travel would be too long. You don't want New Caledonia going away to like Lebanon. If you don't know where Lebanon and New Caledonia are on a map, please look it up. So in that group, New Caledonia and Fiji are up top. Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea are on the bottom. Solomon Islands now has to beat New Caledonia in November and not lose again, or Solomon Islands are out, which is stupid to say. In the other group, New Zealand rather predictably went out and beat Tahiti, who are also not bad in their own right. They played in like the Confed Cup in like 2007. So Tahiti's not awful. Vanuatu, who I had no confidence in, went out and beat another team I have no confidence in Samoa, 4-1 to set up New Zealand up top with Vanuatu second because they conceded that one goal to Samoa. If they didn't concede that goal to Samoa, then Vanuatu would be on top of New Zealand right now. And then we still have two more sets of matches in November, and then we have the playoffs in March, and they will be the first team, the first groups to know who's going to the World Cup is freaking Oceania. Make it make sense. Oceania, how about them? All right, UEFA Nations League, don't care about them. CONCACAF Nations League, because we care about the USMNT. Who are the USMNT playing in November? And it was a flair for the dramatic and a team I completely counted out, shocking everyone. And I didn't talk about them in the last window. Going into this window, the teams that were in prime position were Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Guadeloupe, because Guadeloupe had a really easy schedule because Guadeloupe had to play Martinique twice. Well, Guadeloupe choked it and got relegated. Well, they have to play like some play-in now. How does this work? They have to play in a play-in. Well, that's fun. They're playing in a play-in and relegation to League D, a League B. So they got relegated. Guadeloupe and Guyana. Guyana, rather predictably. We knew that was going to happen, though, because Guyana lost to Guatemala and then got destroyed by a team we'll talk about in a minute. Because the only reason they're here is because they put 5 past Guyana. But back to Guadeloupe, they drew Martinique, and then they drew Martinique the second time. They lost the first time, including conceding in the 86th minute to lose to Martinique. Martinique gets 4 points this window and saves themselves from relegation. They knock Guadeloupe out and get them relegated. Martinique stay in and now have a chance to qualify for the Gold Cup because you go to like the Gold Cup prelims. I don't know how that works because it doesn't even pop up on Wikipedia how it works. Costa Rica got 4 points this window against a team we're talking about later, and then they beat Guatemala. Guatemala beat Guyana and then lost to Costa Rica. And that brings up to our team in question, Suriname. Now, Suriname, they beat Guyana and they freaking lost to Guadeloupe. So I thought they had no chance because they had to play Costa Rica and Guyana. And I thought they would lose to Costa Rica to take themselves out of it. Well, that didn't happen because Suriname went out and drew Costa Rica and then beat Guyana by 4. And because of goal difference being against the first tiebreaker, Suriname jumps Guatemala to advance to the CONCACAF Nations League quarterfinals. I love this. I love this. You know what? Have nothing makes sense. I think that puts Suriname, a team that were in pot 5, by the way. It puts them into the Gold Cup. I don't know how the Gold Cup qualifying works. Let's take a look at that first, because the Gold Cup, which, by the way, is next summer, is the freaking same time pretty much as the Club World Cup, and no one's really going to care about it. The teams that have made it already, we don't even know. We freaking don't even know already. So we're flying now. But back to the Nations League. So Suriname and Costa Rica are through. Costa Rica, of course, being the team in first. Suriname in second. Guatemala, because they blew it. And they lost by 3. If they did lose by 3 and Suriname didn't win by more goals, Guatemala would have possibly made it over Suriname. Martinique stay in Nations League A. They are on 5 points. Guadeloupe are on 4. They're out, as is Guyana, who got 1 point in the entire thing because they drew Martinique, and I thought that was going to be Martinique's downfall. I was wrong. And Group B also had a flair for the dramatic. See, Jamaica were in a very weird spot, and they were having to win and then draw someone to automatically be through to the next round. Well, they played Nicaragua, and a Nicaraguan team that's been really, really good recently. Nicaragua lost to Jamaica, which sets up our the two relegation fodder teams in Trinidad and Cuba. And Cuba, whoever wins those two matchups is safe, and the other one's probably out. Trinidad drew the first match because they could prove they actually could score. A team that drew French Guiana and lost 4-0 to Honduras. Um, Drew Cuba and then beat Cuba, so Cuba got relegated. As for Honduras, they had to beat French Guiana and get a point as well from Jamaica to automatically go through. And Honduras made that match really uncomfortable because Honduras only won 3-2 against French Guiana, which sets up our incredible fixtures of Jamaica hosting Honduras and Nicaragua playing against French Guiana. And Nicaragua basically had to win by like 6 to have a chance. Well, Nicaragua went behind to French Guiana at home. They eventually won. They won 3-2 because they went down 2-1. They scored twice, but it's not enough. Because Jamaica and Honduras played the most boring game ever. A match that was dominated by Honduras. I watched this game, and Honduras dominated like 90% of the match. Jamaica had like 2 chances. There was like a penalty shout eventually. But in the end, Jamaica draws Honduras 0-0 to put both of them through because Nicaragua couldn't beat French Guiana by a lot. And because of this, Jamaica wins the group, Honduras second, then Nicaragua, Trinidad, Cuba, and French Guiana. So the quarterfinals, how this works is there's the 4 best ranked CONCACAF teams, which are Mexico, Canada, USA, and Panama. And then there are the rankings for the group stage winners and the runners-up. Suriname is not the worst team here because they got one more goal for than Honduras. So the quarterfinals are Costa Rica and Panama again. USA is playing Jamaica again. Suriname is playing Canada, and Honduras is playing Mexico again. It's like the same thing every year. And if you don't know anything about Mexico and Honduras played them like pretty recently, and it was like kind of close. By the way, if you don't know anything about Honduras, they've made the World Cup a couple of times, but they've never made it out of the group stage. If you look at their recent fixtures, they've beat Mexico in the last Nations League quarterfinals first leg in Honduras. Then blew it in extras in penalties against Mexico and pissed me off. And then playing in the qualifiers for Copa America, they blew it to Costa Rica. In Frisco, but they've been in great form this year. In the World Cup qualifying, they beat Cuba and they beat Bermuda, but that's pretty much irrelevant. The Nations League, they've been okay. If they didn't lose to Jamaica, they would have been in a much more comfortable position. But, they're in a spot where they have to go back to playing in Toluca and in Honduras to put themselves through in this. And to possibly play in the Nations League semifinal and final in March. In the other fixtures, the United States play another uncomfortable fixture in the Nations League. They have to play the aforementioned Jamaicans. Now, the Jamaicans, this year alone, in the last couple of times this happened, last time we were here, between these two, we were in the Nations League semifinals, and Jamaica was dominating the match against the United States. But because of nothing making any goddamn sense anymore, Jamaica scored in the first minute, and nothing else was happening. The United States were building chances, but couldn't finish them off. And Ongle, on the last kick of regulation, leveled the match. It was a shot. It was blocked, but it was like kicked in by a Jamaican player, and it was 1-1. Haji Wright eventually won them the match. But ever since that match, They were soaring and then fell apart. They got destroyed in the Copa America, but since then they've got unbeaten. They drew Cuba, they beat Honduras, they beat Nicaragua, and then they drew Honduras again. They're playing in Kingston, and the last time these two played in Kingston, Jamaica won, by the way. That was in World Cup qualifying for the previous World Cup. I am a little bit nervous as a fan of the USA. I think USA still wins it, but it's not going to look convincing because I don't even know who's going to play for the US. Pochettino, who look. Sorry about that, guys. I'm in a little bit of a dry throat right now. Pochettino looked good in the first friendly with Panama. The U.S. had half their team recalled back to by the clubs, and they got Dos Cera by Mexico. So a little bit of a worry there. Suriname, they're going to be happy to be here. I think they got annihilated by Canada. That Canadian team is so good. And then Costa Rica, Panama, I think it's going to be the most boring fixture ever. Usually is. I think 2 goals total get scored. I like Costa Rica to make it through over the Panamanian national team. Costa Rica have been playing a lot of competitive matches recently. They've looked good in some of those competitive matches. I like the Costa Rican team to go through. So the winner advances to the Gold Cup and qualifies for the semifinals. The loser has to go through qualification for the Gold Cup, which they don't even know how it works yet. So this has the potential to be complete chaos. But yeah, then the other part of the Nations League, there's play-in matches also in November. Shout out to the Cayman Islands. They're playing in the play-in matches against Guadeloupe. They're going to get destroyed. Also, shout out to Belize, who might make it to Nations League A. That's kind of random. They have to play French Guiana. Should be fun. But international break was complete madness from the situation with Nigeria to Ghana losing Ghana losing twice to a team in the Civil War. You had freaking Asia with Uzbekistan, Iran thriving, and Bahrain's matchup with Indonesia occurring. And the end of that match, we had South America, which had Bolivia beat Colombia, but then get destroyed by Argentina, and Uruguay not scoring a goal since mid-July. And then CONCACAF, where it's all downhill probably for CONCACAF. And don't forget about Oceania. New Zealand thriving. Solomon Islands might be in trouble. All to watch out for with the November preview coming next month. As that will be the end of today's episode of the Robbie Basel Show. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you see, hit the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. Official NHL season preview, I'm not going to lie about this again, is on Tuesday. I know I pushed it back again, and I'm sorry, but this video had to come out first because it's all stuff that's going on right now. NHL season preview, I've had my list done for about a month, but I just haven't gotten around to the video yet. That is next. For now, once again, Robbie Basel saying so long. Enjoy your weekend. If you're a fan of Iona, enjoy homecoming. I'll see you guys around. But for this channel, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, everyone.